யாதும் ஊரே யாவரும் கேடீர்.
செம்மொழி வலையொலி யூடியூப் சேனல். இந்த சேனலின் மூலமாக, அந்த வலையொலியின் மூலமாக பல்வேறு தகவல்களை தினந்தோறும் நாங்கள் வழங்கி கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய அந்த நிலையில் முழுமையாக கண்டு பார்க்கலாம்.
The title of this paper is Ancient Tamil Classics and A.K.Ramanujam. Translation is one of the most essential labors to any literature, as it paves the way for international influences, introduces new genres found in other languages, widens the capacity for meaning and expression of the target language, provides a current of new ideas, and promotes a proper understanding among various peoples of the world by the essential oneness of mankind. In the Indian context, its services become all the more valuable because we have got at least 10 to 15 major literatures whose great works will be confined to narrow linguistic areas unless translated into English. As early as 1964, Professor V.K. Gokak underlined the need for the creation of a body of what he calls Indo-English writing, consisting of scholarly translations into English of classical Indian literary works in Sanskrit and other regional languages. Using this suggestion, Sujit Mukherjee defined Indo-English literature as a translation into English from literature in Indian languages, thus reserving the other term, Indian writing in English, for the original works of Indian writers in English. Whatever may be the validity of this distinction, and however unsatisfactory the two terms may be, every Indian would be tempted to think that the growth of Indo-English literature is politically, culturally, and linguistically more important than even that of Indian writing in English, since our regional literatures in their ancient as well as modern works can offer the country and the world much more than our contemporary Indian writers in English can hope to do. Such a realization might have been one of the main reasons for Ramanujam's interest in translating Tamil and Kannada works into English. Another reason for his choice of the translator's mission is not hard to find. In his own poetry, a persistent concern with his Indian past in the form of evocations of familial memories and tributes to the absorbing power of his traditional culture, laced with satire, constitutes a major theme. He is aware of this hold his Hindu heritage has over his mind and heart. I must seek and will find my particular hell in my Hindu mind. That is what he says. His own Indian literatures have served as a source of inspiration and a repertoire of themes and images. English and my disciplines, linguistics and anthropology, give me my outer forms, that is linguistic, metrical, logical, and other such ways of shaping experience. And my first 30 years in India, my frequent visits and field trips My personal and professional preoccupations with Kannada, Tamil, the classics and folklore give me my substance, my inner forms, that is images and symbols. It is his long stay abroad that must have created the urge to understand the value of his own tradition. A fellow Tamil who is also preoccupied with his native culture, R. Parthasarathi, spoke for both of them when he said, "There is something to be said for exile. You learn roots are deep." In Parthasarathi's case, the encounter with the West is one of disillusionment. As reported in his essay, Whoring After English Gods, he began his poetic career with utter contempt for everything Indian and love of England and English, hoping to make them his own. But as a result of his sojourn in England, a new awareness of himself and India dawned upon him, forcing him to conclude that his prolonged and tempestuous affair with English was over. He even went to the extent of declaring, "I now firmly believe that I should not write poems in any other language but Tamil." Ramanujan, instead of making such heroic declarations, quietly took to the task of translating works of his own language into English, which is of course the next best thing to writing poems in one's own mother tongue. It is heartening to note that an inner compulsion rather than pecuniary or chauvinistic or academic considerations forced him to undertake this task. He says, in 1976, in the sub-zero sun of a Minnesota winter, I read and reread the Thiruvaimozhi with care, and these ancient poems came alive for me. His afterword to the collection Hymns for the Drowning, a succinct analysis of the salient features of Bhakti poetry in Tamil, as evidenced in the writings of Alvars and Nayanmars, with profuse quotations from the Tamil and Western authorities on this period, bears ample testimony to his having been immersed in the philosophic hymns he has translated. But for a genuine interest in these songs, he would not have gone for elucidation like Acharya Hridayam, a commentary in Sanskritized Tamil, that is Manipravala, the 10 volumes of Anangaracharya and the 10 of Purushottama Naidu. Ramanujan, as a translator, has certain advantages over many other Indian translators. He can handle the English language with nearly the same competence as the native speaker. His experience as a creative writer in English has endowed him with an unfailing sense of rhythm and a technical accomplishment that is indisputable. Many English translations done by the Indians are condemned on the ground that they are not free from errors of idiom and syntax. A Saturday Review commentator, for example, passes this verdict on some Indian stories in translation. He says, the present versions have exceeded the most liberal elements of spelling mistakes, confused diction, wrong tenses, muddled punctuation, and fractured syntax. When the Indian translators are sure of their English, they commit the other serious blunder of resorting to a conscious or unconscious use of the speech of a past age or of the awkward mixture of several speeches. Ramanujan's language is completely free from such defects, but the readability he achieves as a result of his masterly control over the language has blinded his Western critics to another equally serious limitation from which his translations suffer, one caused by the unwarranted liberties he takes with the original. As one might expect, Ramanujan has stated his translation policy in unambiguous terms, supporting Dryden's recommendation of the middle way between literal translation and imitation. Ramanujan observes that items are more difficult to translate than relations, textures more difficult than structure, words more difficult than phrasing, linear order more difficult than syntax, lines more difficult than patterns. And the problems increase when the two languages happen to be as startlingly different from each other as modern English and medieval Tamil. If Voltaire has said that the letter killeth but the spirit giveth life, Ramanujan asserts that in the act of translating, the spirit killeth and the letter giveth life. Any direct attack on the spirit of the work is foredoomed to fuzziness, he says. He claims to have translated unit by syntax unit and recreated the way the parts articulate the poem in the original. The sound look, the syntax, the presence and absence of punctuation and the sequential design are part of the effort to bring the Tamil poems faithfully to an English reader. He believes that the copious explanatory notes and the scholarly afterword to the book Hymns for the Drowning would translate the reader toward the poems. His theory is sound, but then every translator contends that his method takes the reader close to the original. Even P. Lal, advocating his favorite mode of translation called transcreation, which actually permits excessive divergence from the original, states, I would like very briefly to correct the impression in some circles that transcreation involves wide departures from the original. It in fact is the closest to the original. Almost all the translators maintain that they have adhered to faithfulness, but they do not always mean the same thing by faithfulness. They agree that faithfulness does not imply word by word translation and use the argument to justify all kinds of liberties they take with the original. Interpretations of faithfulness range from fidelity to external form to reflecting the spirit of the original. In Ramanujan's case, the two books, The Interior Landscape and Hymns for the Drowning, have to be examined in detail to see how far away from literalness he has gone in order to achieve the avowed aim of bringing the Tamil poems faithfully to an English reader. The Interior Landscape contains translations of love poems from the classical Tamil anthology Kurundogai, which is supposed to be at least 20 centuries old. Each dramatic monologue in that anthology is a well-wrought urn witnessing to the powers of observation and meditation as well as to the craftsmanship of the great Sangam poets. For a proper understanding of the nature of Ramanujan's rendering, it may be compared with another modern translation done by Shanmugam Pillai and David D. Ludden. Their renderings of One of the best pieces are given below. What kin was your mother to mine? What was my father to yours anyway? And how did you and I meet ever? But our hearts are as red earth and pouring rain, mingled beyond parting. This is A.K.Ramanujam's translation of the famous poem beginning with Yayum Nyayum Yaragiyaro Endayum Nundayum Yammurai Kelir. And the other translation, your mother and my mother, how are they related? Your father and my father, what are they to one another? You and I, how do we know each other? Like the rain and red earth, our loving hearts are mingled as one. The second version is a product of a joint effort by a South Indian linguist and an American student of Tamil, whose intent is both to translate with scholarly accuracy and fidelity to the original, and to render the translations in a pleasing and readable English format. Ideally, the translator should be the native speaker of the target language, or it may be collaboration between two persons compensating for the deficiencies of each other, as in the case of Nazim Isakil and Virinda Nabar, the authors of the English renderings of the Marathi poems of Indra Sant. Pillai and Laddan had the advantage of internal checks and balances provided by the collaboration, but Ramanujan happens to be a creative writer in his own right, whereas neither of the other two is, and these factors are reflected in their creations. Ramanujan's rendering is free and imaginative. The other is more faithful to the original. Our loving hearts and know each other in Pillai and Laddan's version are more faithful echoes of the original than the corresponding passages in Ramanujan's translation. The modern poet's use of anyway in the third line, that is Ramanujan's use anyway in the third line, not found in the original, adds a colloquial touch to the monologue. K.R. Srinivasa praise of Ramanujan's piece that it is no small achievement to have matched the old sophistication of romantic love to the current sophistication of linguistic finish. This is what K.R. Srinivasa says. This is a little misleading because there is more of linguistic sophistication in the Tamil original, since it manages to convey its sense in 21 short words, while the modern poet requires 35. And what the two words beyond parting convey is expressed through a single letter A coming at the end of the Tamil stanza. In some pieces, Ramanujan fails to impart the natural vigor of the original and seems to be satisfied with platitudes. The anxious beloved, who is slowly getting disillusioned because her lover has not kept his promise to return at the beginning of the rainy season, is consoled in a touching manner by her girlfriend, who cleverly denies the arrival of the monsoon. The girlfriend says, these fat condry trees are gullible. The season of rains that he spoke of when he went through the stones of the desert is not yet here, though these trees, mistaking the untimely rains, have put out their long arrangement of flowers on the twigs as if for a proper monsoon. This is Ramanujan's translation. In Pillai and Laddan's version, we come across certainly foolish in the place of gullible, and that phrase is closer to the original. While there is nothing poetic about fat kondrai trees and their long arrangements of flowers, widespreading kondrai tree and its flowers in crowded but orderly bunches found in the other translation are better substitutes. The last line, which is misleadingly ambiguous, as if for a proper monsoon, could have been dropped, that is in A.K.Ramanujam's translation, could have been dropped since its meaning has already been conveyed. It is in the other collection, Hymns for the Drowning, that Ramanujan, in his over enthusiasm to catch the attention of the Western readers, ignores to do justice to the original. Unfortunately, he forgets the wise policy that a good translation ought, for the sake of the contemporary reader, to sound on the whole more familiar than strange.